The NFL admitted a horrifying Baltimore Ravens mistake, and there's nothing that the Ravens can do about it.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. Appreciate everyone for being here and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day. Again, we're now twice per day on Locked On Ravens, in the morning with our regular show, 6 a.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday, and now in the evening, 6 p.m. Eastern time with Locked On Ravens PM, which we are here with today, or I guess this evening. And we have a lot in store for you on today's show. Thanks so much to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. And on today's show, the NFL admitted a horrifying Baltimore Ravens mistake, and there's nothing the Ravens can do about it. We'll talk about that as well as more Tyler Linderbaum updates being revealed. We heard from Eric DeCosta earlier in the day, but more has surfaced since then. So we'll dive into all of that. But we have to talk about this whole mistake that the NFL made. And so this surfaced over the course of Tuesday, where there was a lot of conversation about the combine. But then this other piece of news came out, or this story came out, where Troy Vincent, who is the executive vice president of football operations, he told Mark Maskey that the Isaiah Likely play was among of a handful of replay rulings that they had second thoughts about. That was the original story. This got multiple updates throughout the day. So it started with a quote that said there were two plays in particular. There was the Likely play, Ravens Steelers in the end zone, and then you had the one, there was a Jets play, but it was the Likely play that you go, that was interesting because of the third step. They were talking about the ball extended out, so it was what constitutes that third act. And so that was an interesting part of it, but there was an update that an NFL spokesman clarified with Pro Football Talk, because this article came from Mike Florio, that while that likely play was discussed in detail, it was not one of the handful that Vincent was referring to that the league would like to have back. That was part of it, where the league said, or Troy Vincent essentially said, that there were about 5 plays of the 171 plays that we called on replay or replay assist. They came back to the booth. There were 5 that we said if we had to do it again on just the replay assist in general, of the 171, there were 5 that after we just kind of took a step back and breathed, 4 of them were in the 1 o'clock window. If we had to do that one again, just looking at it. So that was the story where I was like, oh, he's talking about the Likely play. But then the NFL spokesperson clarified that even though that play was discussed in detail, that was not one of the ones that Vincent was referring to. But then there was another update at 11:34 a.m. Eastern time that said the NFL confirmed that Vincent did acknowledge another play in that Steelers and Ravens game, the interception thrown by Aaron Rodgers, which was originally ruled correctly on the field and should not have been overturned on replay. That one, if you don't remember, was the ball getting tipped by CJ Okoye and it landing in essentially like a tie-ish between Aaron Rodgers and Teddye Buchanan. Rodgers kind of like went down to the ground and then rolled, and they ruled it an interception on the field, and then they replay assisted it, and they overturned it. And this is a mistake. The NFL is like, yeah, oops, our bad. That was a huge play in the game. That play, if you remember, came in the fourth quarter, 7:01 to go in the fourth quarter. This was the Pittsburgh 41-yard line. And that would have given the Ravens at this point were down 27-22. There was already a bunch of other stuff that was going on in this game. They were down 27-22, and the drive didn't result in anything for Pittsburgh at the end of the day. They had to punt from their own 36-yard line. But even still, like, you had a situation where you could have gotten the ball back if you're Baltimore in Pittsburgh territory. You're down by 5 points. That was a massive shift in the game. Regardless of what way it went, it would have been a shift for the Ravens. And of course, it was a shift for the Steelers. So instead, Baltimore gets the ball at their own 22-yard line after a couple more plays, instead of at the Pittsburgh 41. And the game went the way it went. That was unfortunate, but it's more than unfortunate to me. Where the NFL, there is no accountability system here. This is the second call that they have admitted was incorrect. The first one was the Travis Jones play where they called him leveraging over the center or whatever it was, and that gave the Steelers, instead of a field goal, a touchdown, and again, a 5-point loss for the Ravens. And now you're doing this. There were 3 controversial calls, and while the NFL didn't explicitly say that likely call wasn't the wrong call, I'm going to say it was. And there were 3 incorrect calls all going against the Ravens that clearly cost them that game, cost them a shot at the playoffs, right? Like that game, if they had won it and everything else stayed the same, they would have made the playoffs. It's ridiculous that the NFL does not hold their officials accountable. This is something I've been calling for a while on Locked On Ravens. I haven't talked about it in a while, but there needs to be some level of accountability system here for both officials and the league, whether it is post-game press conferences or, grading systems. I've seen people joke about relegation. I don't think that's going to happen, but there has to be some level of accountability for this, because this is not just one instance in one game. This is 3 huge calls. And even if you just want to boil it down to the 2 the NFL has admitted, with the Travis Jones call and this Teddye Buchanan call, and those were both plays that would have secured the Ravens a victory, in my opinion. Now, again, a lot has to play out over the course of the game. The likely play definitely would have, but all 3 of those added up, there's like a 99% chance the Ravens win that game. And to kind of have the NFL months after this happened be like, oops, our bad, sorry guys, and then like nothing happens, that's ridiculous to me. That is ridiculous. And there have already been a couple of players who have talked about it, and that's something I'm going to dive into a little bit tomorrow in terms of like the responses, because I think those are still filtering in as I'm recording this, and I'm sure there might be a couple of more by the time I record tomorrow's episode. But there were a couple players that were just like, okay, yeah, cool, that's great. So I just, it's ridiculous here. And there was a lot of unhappiness, and there should be. It should be. I mean, it's anger, it's frustration, it's disappointment. This is, look, if the Ravens had lost that game of their own volition, and I guess at the end of the day, did they make enough plays to win? I guess not. But at the same time, they kind of did, because some of the plays that they made were called the incorrect calls. And, like Teddye Buchanan made that play. He wasn't credited for it. Travis Jones, he was penalized for something that he didn't do and was not against the rules. I think Isaiah Likely sending the ball out, I think that's a touchdown. But again, the NFL didn't admit that one. So there's just so much that there are a lot of emotions, I think, for a lot of people with this. But it's not just a Ravens thing, man. This is across the league. I mean, you see calls every single week that are just blown and nothing happens. It's just like, oh, well, we'll get them next week. And I know, I guess there's some level of a grading system throughout the officiating league or whatever it may be. But this has to stop getting unchecked, especially now, where, again, there needs to be bigger repercussions. And, I feel like everybody should be held accountable. Players are held accountable. If they make a mistake, they're held accountable, and it's out there. Coaches, same thing. It's out there. I think for officials, it also has to be out there. Is it just, making these guys full time? Like, that's a big thing. I know that's been a big topic of conversation over the last handful of years. It's just like, full time versus part time. What does that do? But there's a problem that needs to be fixed. And it's a horrifying mistake that I'm sure, look, this is not the first time, and it will definitely not be the last that something like this happens. But you look at all the implications of these calls and, the players responding to it, such as Lamar, Isaiah Likely, Kyle Van Noy, et cetera, et cetera. Like, yeah, the players have a right to be upset and, taking it in different ways. Fans have a right to be upset. Everybody has a right to be upset. And it robbed the Ravens. It robbed them. So really disappointing. But coming up in the second part of the show, we will dive into more Tyler Linderbaum updates being revealed. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming up on the show. First, the show is brought to you by HomeChef. As the new year gets going, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner is a big one between busy work days, cold winter nights, and packed schedules. Having an easy, reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference. That's where HomeChef comes in. HomeChef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. They're rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease. And it's easy to see why. Meals come ready to fit your schedule, 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays, or quick lunches. There are over 30 weekly options, including family-sized meals and different dietary choices. Recipes are simple but feel elevated, even restaurant quality, with dishes created by chefs like Gordon Ramsay. For a limited time, HomeChef is offering my listeners 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. And the show was brought to you by FanDuel. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. I love features this time of year, whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title. It adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now not only can your pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Moving along, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Locked On Ravens PM edition of the show. Thanks again for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. And spread the word. We're now twice per day on Locked On Ravens at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern time. I also know we might be having some audio issues with the show right now. So what I always say is if it's not available on one platform, video or audio, it's probably available in the next one. So we're free and available everywhere still. I just think we're having some technical difficulties there on the audio side across the network. So the show for yesterday or for this morning was uploaded, but I know the instant reaction show for Eric DeCosta and Jesse Minter's press conferences might not have been at the time that I'm recording this. So just wanted to put that out there. But again, thanks for being here. We have so much Ravens content on top of all the other stuff we give you, the daily stuff, but also bonus episodes on the weekend. We got instant reactions after pieces of big news and after, of course, every single Ravens game during the year. We got watch-alongs during the year for the games. Locked On Ravens Squad show twice a week, Mondays and Wednesdays, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, and the Locked On Ravens Everydayers Club, which you can get exclusive one-on-one text access with me, weekly Q&As, ad-free episodes, Discord server, etc. Link to that's in the description below, as well as on the Locked On website on the Locked On Ravens page. But all right, let's talk about Tyler Linderbaum. Eric DeCosta, if you didn't hear, he spoke to the media, and he made it clear that the Ravens have offered Tyler Linderbaum a market-setting extension or deal. And that just kind of laid the cards out on the table, said he wanted him back. And Jesse Minter kind of echoed the same sentiments, but said that, of course, they're going to respect the free agency process if it gets there. Well, there was an interesting report later in the night on Monday about Tyler Linderbaum's agent, where apparently the strategy, this coming from with Greg Rosenthal, Ian Rappaport put this out on his podcast on the NFL Daily and said, quote, they have tried to negotiate with him. His agent is very difficult to negotiate with. Neil Conrich is the agent, and his method is basically not responding. And so that went out. And then all these comments came out about Linderbaum from DeCosta and Minter. And then Jordan Schultz, who is an NFL insider, he put out a report that said, quote, the Ravens remain hopeful they can get a deal done with Tyler Linderbaum before he reaches the open market, just like they did last year with Ronnie Stanley, per sources. Linderbaum is generating a ton of buzz from teams I've spoken to. If he reaches the open market, the expectation is he could land a deal north of $22 million per year. And then one executive told Jordan Schultz, quote, the center is the extension of the coach for most of these teams, and he's 25, three-time Pro Bowler, just getting started in his career. I've been saying this for how long now? This is exactly what I'm saying. The Ravens need to get this thing done before free agency happens, because if free agency happens and Linderbaum's not signed, he's gone. He's walking out the door. And he's walking out the door with a lot of money. He's going to where a lot of money is. I think more money than he'll get from the Ravens. I think there's going to be a choice for Linderbaum in this. Is the Ravens market-setting deal that they offered him $19 million, $20 million, whatever that could be? I wouldn't be shocked. Like, I'd be surprised, but I wouldn't be like on the floor if Linderbaum got $25 million a season if he hit the open market, because there's going to be so much competition, and centers of Tyler Linderbaum's caliber barely ever, if ever, hit the free agent market. Teams would be falling on top of each other to try to get Linderbaum onto their squad. And so you also have to look at the situation this year, right? It's a little bit of a unique situation with John Harbaugh in New York now, Todd Monken in Cleveland now. There are a lot of teams. Obviously, the Harbaugh connection, which I think is going to linger for a couple of years in Baltimore with Jim in Los Angeles. And that's the team that needs O-line help. So that makes sense. And there are a lot of other teams as well. There are going to be so many threats for Linderbaum where if he hits free agency, I don't think Baltimore is going to go to 22 or 23 or any of that. I think that Linderbaum and his agent probably know that. So that report on, Linderbaum's agent not picking up the phone or whatever, they're trying to negotiate with him. I don't know how true or not that is. That was the report from me and Rappaport. And again, this thing about Jordan Schultz here, $22 million per season, I'm not sure how, if that's the deal he'll actually get. But these are the rumblings that are going around Tyler Linderbaum right now. And, I don't know, like the first one is definitely like concerning. The other one is just like common sense to me, where if you let Linderbaum hit the open market, he's gone. And that's just the reality of the situation. And by the way, it would have been the same thing with Ronnie Stanley. If Stanley had hit the open market, we had already heard of teams interested like the Chiefs and the Patriots. He would have probably been in New England right now. That would have just been the reality of the situation. Now, I don't think the Ravens are going to be able to get Linderbaum on the same deal that they got Stanley on in terms of position. $20 million for Linderbaum, that's a very big, that'd reset the market by $2 million in the center position. Obviously the tackle market, $20 million per season. There are guys who, the tackle position gets a little more money generally, which is why the franchise tag number, which is encapsulating of all offensive linemen, would be a no-go for the Ravens. And that's essentially what Eric DeCosta said there. Linderbaum's really important. Is he a perfect player? No, he's not. He's a little small in terms of him, but I'm never gonna rag on a guy for being smaller than other guys if he can play football. And that's what Linderbaum can do. I know the pass protection numbers came out. He was 31st in the league there. That's not great. But we also have to remember who he's playing next to. There were some reps that were one-on-one, and those aren't good. I'm not saying Linderbaum's a perfect player. Again, I'm not. But you have looked for years and years for your franchise center after losing Matt Burke. You've gone through all these names, Jeremy Zutaw, Ryan Jensen, Matt Skura, Patrick McCary, et cetera, et cetera. You have your guy. It'd be a disaster to me if Linderbaum walked out of the door, because now you're filling 3 spots, your entire interior you're filling up, and it just becomes a lot harder of a task. So hopefully Linderbaum stays around. But that's all I have for you today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning into the show here on Locked On Ravens PM. Coming up, of course, we'll have Locked On Ravens AM, I guess. We'll have the regular show for you at 6 a.m. Eastern time, as well as, of course, Locked On Ravens PM tomorrow and the Locked On Ravens Squad show tomorrow. Tons and tons of Ravens content for you. So be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form. Follow along and subscribe in audio form. And I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.